Good morning and welcome to the panel discussion on youth work in times of crisis and the role of youth research, hosted by European Youth Research Network, RAY. We are now in Prague, Czechia, and we are live streaming from our RAY network meeting where all 34 RAY research partners and national agencies are present, and they are here to exchange, discuss, and reflect on RAY network and its work. RAY research projects produce very timely and important findings, evidence that youth work works, and the projects make a difference. They make a difference not only to the lives of the young people that participate, but to the youth workers and to the society in large. We are aware that our job does not finish with producing the evidence. It actually starts at that moment. We need to disseminate, we need to explain, we need to share our findings with the policy and practice circles. That is what we will be doing now. We have 5 experts, speakers in our panel, and we will discuss this important topic of youth work in line with the priorities that are set for the program, and especially in times of crisis. We have a very distinct panel. We are very grateful that they joined us today. We have Babis Papayannou. He's the policy officer at European Commission in the Director General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. And we're very happy to have Babis here because not only him being from the Commission, but he has an experience coming from youth field and practice and policy. So he literally came from the field, and we're very glad that he's doing what he's doing now. And we also have online Alicia Pavlovchuk. I practiced all these times, but and Alicia is a digital inclusion thinker and doer. She's an active researcher and trainer in the field of digital inclusion, and she works alongside strategic organizations. And she's the founder of Digital Bees, a digital inclusion collective aiming to use creative and participatory methods to critically examine our digital selves. Here we have Tanya Strecker from RAY Transnational Research Team. She's an academic and associate lecturer in University of Lleida in Spain, and she is part of the RAY research team. She has been doing academic research, longitudinal work on social inequality in higher education, and she has a very impressive publishing record, articles in journals like Journal of Youth Studies, and she will share with us the insights from RAY research. Also, we have Agnieszka Rybinska. She's the head of the research unit of the Polish Erasmus Plus National Agency, Foundation for Development of the Education System. As you might well know, RAY is a combination of national agencies and research partners, and Agnieszka is in charge of the research unit, and she has also vast experience coordinating state aid programs, also focusing on research on public intervention evaluation, including EU funds in education and also SMEs. So she has a vast experience to share with us on evaluation and monitoring of the programs. And on my left, we have Onya Ogarman. She has been campaigning and working on climate justice for 10 years. She's from Ireland, and she co-founded a youth-led campaigning network, and it is Ireland's largest coalition of organizations working on climate and working across policy and mobilization. And they deliver action-oriented workshops to young people in a variety of settings. And also, they are developing a training program for teachers to in a climate action course targeted at 12 to 15 years old in the formal Irish education system. And they are not only focusing on one aspect of it, but it's impressive that they are looking at exploring the root causes of intersecting social, economic, and climate crisis as a whole. Well, we are here to listen to our speakers, so without further ado, I would like to start asking Babis about these program priorities, since when they are the priorities, and why they are the priorities. Babis?
Thank you very much. Hope the sound is okay for you.
It's very good.
But I would like to ask the people who are behind the screens and to close their microphone because we are hearing all the time their comments uh, and not hearing well the moderator and the speaker. So if it's possible, please help us with that. It will be more easy for us to follow the discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks a lot for the invitation, and we are really happy to be with you even in this virtual format. Unfortunately, it was not easy for us to attend physically the meeting. But yes, there are 2 or 3 points that I would like to underline as a starting, let's say, um, having in our mind that there are a lot of changes in what we are doing here, supporting young people, supporting youth civil society organizations, and the building of European youth policy after the pandemic. I believe that this period of 2 years of the pandemic, it was really crucial. We had a lot of problems, and I have the feeling that we managed to reply in a proper way. The At the beginning of the pandemic, the messages that we received from the people connected with the youth policy implementation were difficult and negative. So we know that the sector almost collapsed during the pandemic. There was a limited number of activities. There were no mobility activities, but I have the feeling that the European Commission, and especially the two programs, Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps, managed very quickly to adapt in a digital format, and we managed to implement a number of activities, a big number of activities in digital format. Of course, the priority from now on is to return back to physical meetings, to mobility, and to continue the program as it is planned, and of course to try to learn um, uh, whatever exists as a knowledge, as an experience, lessons learned from the time of the pandemic in order to improve the way of understanding youth policy from now and on. Um, Based on that, I would like also to emphasize, and I would like to inform also that the European Commission starts the process for the midterm evaluation of the youth strategy, the EU youth strategy. So next year, it's a crucial year for us. We are going to make the midterm evaluation and to check where we are. Um, what are the needs for improving, for changing, and even to add new points on the agenda. An interesting point is, and a really interesting information for all of you, the active people of the RAI network, the people from the national agencies, and whoever is supporting the implementation of the European Union youth strategy is the interim evaluation of the youth strategy that we opened some days ago. There is a space, there is a digital space for everyone. You can find the link on Youth Portal, where we are asking people to tell us their opinion about proposals about the next steps implementation of the youth strategy. So the space for this dialogue is open until 21st of October, and we are encouraging all youth stakeholders to participate in this discussion, in this debate about the future of the youth strategy. Going more deep on this connection with youth work, I can say that there are 2 points that I would like to emphasize in this first part. The first is the rethinking of the empower priority of the youth strategy, and based on this debate and the evaluation process of the youth strategy, we would like and we will try to put more tools and to emphasize more on the new trends, the new needs, and the new ways of understanding youth work in Europe in this period. The second thing, which is also really important, is to emphasize on the implementation of the European Youth Work Agenda and the Bonn process. As you know, from December 2020, we have the general framework of the agenda. The European Youth Work Agenda is a starting point, and it's a clear priority for European Commission. We were really lucky and happy for implementing, starting the implementation of point 38 during 2022. We have the subgroup on youth work, and the results of the subgroup will be public and available in the next period, the next month. Based on that, we are going to, and together with the youth work community, we are going to start the process for building the European digital platform on youth work. And on that, we need the knowledge, the support, the experience, but also the active participation of youth researchers, people that they are working on youth work, but also the people who are connected with the digital topics, because according to the guidelines that we have, this new digital youth platform, digital platform on youth work will be the general hub, let's say, on youth work in European level, not in EU, in European, because we are working this in cooperation with the Council of Europe. So it is something that we will try to do in the latest, using the latest technology, using the latest threats, and using the latest knowledge and experience of the sector. And on that, it will be really helpful, the active participation and the inclusion practically of research results that we have on youth work the last period. On that, I have the feeling that Ray will be a really practical supporter for us, because on the one hand, we have the proposals, results, and ideas coming from the implementation of the Erasmus Plus program, which is a really helpful tool. And on the second hand, we have the general experience of the Ray as a research network that can guide us better on how to build this. So I will stop here as a first introduction of the priorities and what is coming. And closing, I would like to say that the closing of the European Year of Youth will mark also with an event here in Brussels, 5th and 6th of December, underlining again the need of research, the need of evidence-based practices for the continuing of building youth policy, the legacy of the year, and the needs of the young people in this new, let's say, normality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babis. And this was good to get the updates, to get the calendar, what's going on. You gave a good overview of the landmark and events coming up. The Ray research has shown again and again that national agencies are not just bureaucratic institutions that push the papers and distribute the budget. National agencies, through implementing these programs, really contribute to the development of youth work in a particular country where they operate, because these programs support the development of youth workers, corporations, and others. But now the national agencies are also facing the issue of the 4 priorities. They're asked to support the implementing of these priorities in the program and also research the impact and evaluation of these projects, again within these 4 priorities. So I would like to turn to Agnieszka, because you're heading a big research unit in the Polish National Agency, and you're asked to evaluate, analyze these programs under these 4 priorities. How are you going to face this task? How do you research these priorities in different parts of the program?
Thank you. Yes, this is true that we have to face and address the issue of the evaluation of those 4 priorities. But what I would like to underline at the very beginning, that we have to take into account the resources that we have and the time, and then carefully choose, because for some of the priorities we know that we need a bit of more time, more reflection, more discussions, more experts' view and experts' help. For some of the priorities, I know that we have already some experience, but we also have to develop and to reflect how we can proceed with this. Let me just say a few words about our research unit, because our agency is, I would not say maybe unique in the sense that we have the one agency in Poland for all Erasmus Plus sectors. So we have 5 plus sports since 2 years, but we also have, we are lucky to have a research unit which actually connects, let's say, I would say statistically 1 person per each sector. But yes, we also have our Eurydice team within this unit and translators, so it helps us quite a lot. But the first issue that I would like to raise is the information and gathering information about what we already have. A couple of years ago, we just found out that we don't really know what the other national agencies are doing as far as the research is concerned, apart from RAY network, in which we were participating since almost the very beginning. But as far as the other research is concerned, we wanted to talk to other agencies. So we came up with an idea to have annual research, international research meeting of national agencies and experts or researchers related to Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps. Each year we are gathering together, we are talking about our research, we exchange the information, we also talk about future possible projects, but also we exchange our experience and we talk about the things we do not know. And last year we came up with such an idea that we will be organizing, and we did organize last week a workshop. It was a workshop in Krakow, although the name was Warsaw Seminar, Research Seminar. But the workshop was actually dedicated to 4 priorities of Erasmus+. So we had each session dedicated to 1 priority, and we gathered 45 people talking from national agencies and researchers, and we were talking about those 4 priorities, how we can address actually this issue, because we will have to address this issue for sure. And once we are talking, I told you at the very beginning that we have to carefully choose. It's not maybe that carefully choose that we have some options, but we have a possibilities now to finance research from TCA budget. And I'm quite grateful for this, that we have this possibility to use this budget and to do even this cross-sectoral research, and this is possible right now. So in our agency, we picked up for the first, the first issue to address, or the first priority, digitalization. And we thought that we will do this across sectors. We just started to do this exercise, let's say, in research. And we chose 4 sectors, education and training, since Ray is also covering youth sector as far as this digital research project is concerned. So we are, for the moment, focusing on that. And we want to be ready partially with partial results for 2024, the mid-2024. As you all see, we will have the midterm evaluation of the programs. But we are also thinking about other priorities, how to research them, and we want to address them. And we are talking with internally with our heads of our sector departments about their needs. And this is the second issue that I would like to raise, is that we as the researchers and the research units, we really have to listen to the needs and to the questions that our colleagues from the sectoral departments have. Because without this, it would be very difficult for us to address their needs and also to have proper research questions, to pose the proper research questions. So we have internal talks with them. We listen to them, and frankly speaking, I'm very happy that for the last 2 or 3 years, there are more research proposals and questions and more questions and you know, the issues raised by our colleagues from different sectors to us, and they ask us to do some research. So I see that they want it. They want to have the research results because they actually need them. They need it. So we are answering the needs. And the third issue, maybe it's the last one, but not the least one that I would like to underline, is the way of communication. Even today in the morning, we started a bit to talk about the communication. And we are, as our unit is really, we are producing lots of research reports. We are publishing them online. Our policy is that we have everything online. Whatever we do, it's published. But we know that we are researchers. We want to show a lot. We want to show as much as possible from the data and information we gathered. So we do vast analysis and we produce immense reports. And sometimes I'm just curious whether anyone apart from us is really reading them in a whole. So, and I'm not talking about the articles we are producing, scientific articles. So I think that one of the things that we really have to think about, and also for the RAY network, for us the participants of the RAY network, how to actually communicate the research results to people who are not researchers, they don't really have much time, they want to have everything brief. One pager is something that they would expect us to do, but also other ways of presenting the research results in a way that it's quite easier or more user-friendly for them. So one of the ways, for example, that we did during the pandemic, when we couldn't meet, and you know, the production of different reports was not maybe sustained, but it was, let's say, more difficult for us to meet and to talk and to have brainstorms. So what we've done, we've come up with an idea that we'll have the internal presentations of our research results of the research to our colleagues from the agency, national agency. So we've done some webinars, presentation of research reports. They were like 15 minutes presentations, but they were very appreciated by our colleagues because they were very, you know, the reports were, the presentation was done in a very short way, brief way, when we communicated the objectives, but also the most interesting results that could be interesting for them. And they asked us recently, why are we not doing this again? And we think we will repeat this, but in person, not online, let's say, so that we can meet and talk more vivid or more alive, I would say.
I mean, these are very important. Communicating the research to different audiences, you mentioned, is very important. Having a research practice and research policy dialogue is important. But I also find it important what you said. Among the 4 priorities, some of them are well studied and there are guidelines and people are more accustomed to it. I mean, in the debate it came out, inclusion. People have more of a knowledge on how to research and investigate the inclusion dimension. But green priority was most of the time is one of the most famous one, that everybody talks green this, sustainability that, environment this. But it's also one of the researchers were indicating it was one of the tough ones to research because it's a very big subject to tackle. So we have Anya here, and I would like to ask her about this one. What is green from your perspective, from the practice? What is a green youth work? What is a green project? And also, I would like to add something there linking to the crisis, because in the practice field, in the youth work practice, there was some questions about the timing when it was about Zoom doing activities, but it was also, we are trying to survive, as Babis was saying. It was a matter of survival at those times. And going green, being sustainable were considered maybe secondary, not less important, but not the high on the list because the priority was. So 2 issues, one in terms of timing, of having green and sustainability as a priority in youth work, and the second one is what makes a youth work project green from your perspective?
Okay, so nice, simple questions. For the first question on timing, I'd actually just like to ask if at home and everyone here, this year, this summer, did you or anyone you know experience extreme weather? Put your hand up if you did.
Well, for the audience is
Okay.
yes, quite a lot.
So, is the timing, is it too much?
Point taken, yes.
And I can talk more about this, but I think what we need to be thinking about is not in terms of this crisis that happened with the pandemic, and it had a very bad impact on many sectors, including the youth sector. But we have another crisis already happening. Like, if we were talking about this 3 years ago, we'd be saying, it's coming. Now we see it. This summer, we saw it. It's happening. So the way I think we need to be thinking about these things is not, oh, we need to consider that something is going to happen. We need to think about there is a transition happening right now. Like Greta Thunberg says, change is coming whether you like it or not. Now, you can take that as a threat from young people that they're going to make change happen, but you can also take it as a physical thing that is happening to the planet, that change is coming. So as people working with young people, we can turn away, we can decide not to look at it straight on, or we can say, okay, there is a transition happening, and we can try and make that transition equitable, we can try and make it fair, we can try and make it just, we can try and make it so that the young people we are working with have a future in which they can achieve their goals and live the way that they want to live. Or we can turn away and say, oh, there's a crisis coming soon, hopefully we'll deal with it. So I think that with the timing question, yes, unfortunately you have to deal with it now. And unfortunately, climate is linked up with all the other crises. And it's linked up with the crises of funding. It's linked up with the crises of lack of political will. It's linked up with the crises of not listening to young people's voices and not trusting that they know what they need, and also not funding spaces for young people to thrive, which I'm sure you're all well aware of. So yes, on timing, we have to do it now. We don't have a choice. So the question is more, how do we manage it? How do we manage it for our young people? On what is a green project? This is like huge. So we can think about it in a few ways. We can think about a green project is a project that purely talks about windmills. Yes, of course, that's a very green project. And maybe with our young people in our community, we want to build windmills. We want to build a future for them where their community has renewable energy so that they're resilient to shocks in the energy industries. But we also might think about, again, in this framing of moving towards a better future, moving with the transition. So you're talking about how you have lots and lots of research on diversity and inclusion. Amazing. Okay, so how do we make sure that every young person is included in the transition? How do we make sure that the voices of every young person is included in the transition to a greener economy? To make sure that we don't have green policies like retrofitting, so that's, retrofitting, it's to make your homes warmer, only available to richer people, only available to people in certain areas. And poor young people, again, are left behind, maybe because they're renting, or maybe because they don't have a choice over how they live. So again, if you have experience in diversity and inclusion, and you can get those young people's voices and their communities' needs into the public arena where these decisions about green are being made, that is a green project, I think. Climate is going to come into every single issue that you are working with already. And my perspective would be, how do you make those projects green? How do you frame those projects in a way that is thinking about the transition and bringing everyone along in the transition so that on the other side or going through, it is better for everyone you're working with and the planet?
Thank you. That puts things into perspective. And it's also refreshing to think that we are not left behind when we're talking about inclusion, when we're talking about digitalization. We are actually talking about the environment. It's just we have to make it more obvious, more clear, and more included. Well, similar to the environment and green issue, digitalization is also very popular. It's a hype thing now. And especially the pandemic speeded up things. It is obvious that it didn't happen with the COVID crisis. It was already happening, but it increased the speed of it. But I think it also created a little bit of a problem for people, experts like Alicia on the issue, because just because we did Zoom classes or we did a virtual meeting, does this mean digitalization and digital transformation being one of the priorities of the program? Is it only about Zooms and online meetings? Alicia, what is your take, and how would you contribute to this issue?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today. And let me tell you that I have done hundreds of Zoom meetings, and I have done hundreds of Zoom meetings about Zoom meetings. So actually talking about how we felt about the fact that we had to do so many Zoom meetings. And many of the meetings that I've done were actually framed within the youth sector. So we did a lot of talking around the digital fatigue, and how tired we were, because out of a sudden we had to move all of these meaningful human interactions into those digital spaces and spend most of our time there, whether we want it or not. So in some of the work that I've done previously, I talked about how within a day, all of the youth workers had to suddenly become digital youth workers. And, it's fair to say that everybody out of a sudden had to upskill themselves and go online. And that led to lots of issues within the sector. There is definitely lots of new problems. You can see that digital spaces, youth work spaces, and youth participation spaces that had the infrastructure in place and that had the skills in the first place did much better than the ones that didn't have that. So it's an interesting area to be in, the digital transformation area. And I myself joined the topic 1.5 years ago, and this process of creating the definition of digital transformation has been a fascinating process. And let me tell you that the digital transformation framework and the definition that we have just now, that has been a co-creative process. So it has been hard work to actually come to a conclusion as to what we mean by digital transformation. As a researcher working with a group of experts, I realized that when we talk about digital transformation, it was the literature, and the reports that I looked at. They were primarily focusing on young people as the consumers and the labor of the future. So it was like, how do we ensure that young people have the skills, to produce and produce and produce in the future? Or how do we ensure that they buy? How do we create the markets where they can buy things? So essentially, our role as the group was to think, how do we create the notion of digital transformation that can actually be grounded in the youth sector and kind of focus on the European values. And so from that, we sort of created that definition, and I'll try to very briefly just to outline what it is here, just so we have a common understanding. But you can definitely check out the resources that are on the Salto Participation and Inclusion website, and there's hundreds of resources there in terms of examples and resources that can help you to kind of think about it in more depth. And I'm also happy to have a conversation with each one of you after this. But in terms of digital transformation, we see it as a process, and it's definitely a process that goes into all of the different priorities. It's not like a one-off exercise that, oh, let's do a Zoom meeting and that's our digital transformation done. In itself, transformation is a process that contains of lots of little transformations. So it isn't like something will at some point get transformed and that's us transformed forever. It is unpredictable. It's happening all the time, and the problem is that it's out of our control in a sense, because at the moment the digital transformation is on someone else's terms, and most of the time it is on the terms of big corporations, right? So the people who are in charge of digital transformation are most of the time big tech companies, which is obviously Facebook, Google, Microsoft. And that's fine. It's just, how do we find a way so this whole entire system of digital transformation is in line with, is more youth-centered, and we also as youth workers and youth practitioners feel valued in it and feel supported. So it's very contextual. The framework has 8 characteristics, and in it we sort of say these are the things in the ideal world, and knowing that it's this vision, utopian vision of digital transformation that we might not get to, but you can totally have a look at these 8 characteristics and see, oh, I haven't thought about that before. Maybe this is something that I can think about whenever I'm planning the next project. So we are talking about, multi-stakeholderism and participation. We talk about access and infrastructure, inclusion, strategy, how do we prepare ourselves for, if there's another crisis in the future, like how do we prepare ourselves so we know that people have the right skills, or young people who don't have digital devices at home have these devices, or they have somewhere to go so they can get one. So we talk about innovation, sustainability, a big one, even when we think about the digital footprint, and when we think about even the impact of the environmental impact of the digital technologies themselves. So having that conversation, the political conversation around internet governance, and it's very important. So thinking about ethics and digital well-being as well. And this is where it gets super overwhelming, so I'm going to just stop here.
Thank you.
Was COVID, was the pandemic good for digital transformation? It's just such a huge question, and I would say that it has provided us with an opportunity just to go for it and just to learn, just to embrace whatever is out there. But at the same time, it has left many communities disconnected even further. So it's kind of increased the digital divides. And Ray has done an amazing work in this area, and they've sort of provided some very important data as to, some of the issues that many youth organizations face because of not having the meaningful digital access. I've also worked with youth workers. I heard about this new digital divide between youth clubs that are amazing and the ones that are still really struggling to, get behind. And also there is this another study where we looked at sort of the national agencies' perceptions of digital transformation and the overall sense of fatigue. and confusion around digital transformation. So I really hope that the work that we are doing is somehow clarifying it a little bit. At the same time, I'm being realistic that no theory is going to fix any problems. Here I am. I'm not even sure if I answered your question, but I hope that I'm happy to share the links to this, and I'm happy to have a conversation after. But like I said, it's never like with digital, it's always confusing, and there's never a simple answer to say yes, we are fixed or we aren't. It's always connected to all of the other issues of exclusion, inclusion, and all of the other priorities.
No, but thank you. You made it clear, and you answered the fact that having a Zoom meeting does not mean digitalization per se. We have to think about inclusion, we have to think about environment, we have to think about haves and have-nots. So it's bigger than just trying to carry.
Absolutely. And I would just add very quickly that it's not just about the use of digital technologies when we talk about digital transformation. It's not only about introducing digital technologies or digitizing things, but it's also about the way our perception of the world changes. It's the way our values change, or the way we change, the way we communication between people changes. So the social values, norms, cultural values. So digital transformation isn't just about the direct use of technology, but the way we live and perceive one another. And so it's important to mention that as well. So digital transformation is not always about the direct use of technology, but like even just talking about misinformation, for instance, that's part of digital transformation. Yeah,
and also this issue of democracy, debate, deliberative. So it goes all the way around.
Absolutely.
Ray Corona research have shown that this emergency switch during the pandemic was not easy for youth organizations. Even there is the assumption that young people are already very comfortable with digital technologies and this debate about digital natives and so on. But many youth organizations had difficulty affording the programs, even the software programs to buy. Or the Trainers Guild was announcing that for lots of freelance trainers, investing in these digital technologies, buying professional membership was a lot of unexpected expenditure. And on top of it, how to use them was something to be challenged. Well, I will turn to one of our own, to Tanya from Ray Transnational Research Team, because Ray is trying to look at all these issues. Ray has a research about digitalization. Ray has a research about Corona and everything. And now you have the priorities. So what is Ray Network planning to do in terms of researching these priorities, taking all the interventions by our previous speakers?
Well, what the network is planning to do, I think we will see throughout this network meeting. So it would be it's a bit too early to say that. But what I can say is what we've done so far, because even though the priorities didn't exist in this way, well, they were there, but they were not there in this way. We do have some things we can share for them, and that's why we organized this whole network meeting around the priorities. So we can share what we already have. And as you know, we have the monitoring surveys. So we have something on all of the priorities in our monitoring survey. For some, we have a lot more than for others. For example, for sustainability, we don't have that much for now. And then we have the thematic projects, which often work with mixed methods. So there we have something more. And I would say what we have most about is participation in democratic life, common values, and civic engagement, because we have several questions in the monitoring survey, and we also had the Ray Part project on participation, which is already finished, so we already have the final findings for this. Then we have quite a lot on inclusion and diversity, because we've got some questions in our surveys that we can then cross with other variables, so we can take a closer look into this. And we also have some upcoming projects on this issue, like Ray Miss and Ray Equal. So we could do more and we will do more, but we already have something here. And for digital transformation, we saw quite a lot from Ray Core, and we're now going to see a lot more with Ray Digi. But as Ray Digi is just starting and ongoing, we don't have that much yet to share there. And as I said, for environment and fight against climate change, there's where we have rather few questions that are relevant from our surveys, and where suppose we will have to take a closer look in throughout the rest of the meeting what we can do about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And now I feel for Anya, because she made it very clear it's already here. You have to do. And then here we are saying, oh, we have everything else ready, but green, we will do it. We'll promise it's here. Now I will go to a little bit of a speed round, quick answers to quick questions. And Babis, thanks for giving us the priorities, the Commission, giving us the program. Now the critical question is, how do you plan to support youth work to operate within these priorities? So you didn't just give us a homework, please. What are you planning to do to help the youth work to meet these the priorities?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Okay, yeah, we have a framework. We have the framework, we have the strategy, we have the agenda, and we have also the tools basically developed, created, and running by the SALTOS, the European Training Strategy, and other tools that helps youth work, helps practically us and helps the national governments to understand the need of youth work, the need to support youth work. And this is the crucial question of how to present the new framework and the new way of understanding of all key stakeholders about the need to not just to extend the program and to give, I don't know, more money to Erasmus Plus projects, or even to connect it with the new topics, the new needs, or the needs in general of the young people, but practically how to support youth work as the crucial factor for the implementation of the not only the strategy, not only the agenda, but also for building youth policy in Europe. So I took two notes from the previous speakers, the topic of the green youth work and the topic of the inclusion dimension. So I have the feeling that these are two very, very important points that we're going to have in front of us in the next period. I'm going to make later a comment on the inclusion because we are preparing something. But in your question about how practically European Commission will enter on that, the answer is that is the implementation of the European Youth Work Agenda and the BOM process. So this is the practical framework that we're going to support and we're going to develop more. I have the feeling that the steps already done by the institutions, by the partners, the Council of Europe, the EU Council of Europe Youth Partnership, the BOM process initiative helps in order to understand, first of all, the conditions. One of the main problem that we have is talking about youth work in the 27 member states of the European Union. In the most of the cases, we're talking about something totally different. So there is no common understanding from country to country. There are national models, there are regional models. We have the Scandinavian or the Iberic or the North or South, you can name it whatever you want, but there is no common understanding. So one of the priorities, one of the practical things that we're going to deal in the next period, and on that we have the support of the EU Council of Europe Youth Partnership, is to update practically the mapping of the previous period about the conditions of youth work in the national in national level, the understanding of youth work from country to country, and also the recognition process, which is a very important priority also for us. So three things. The first thing is to try to to put the youth work as a clear priority and to implement more points of the European youth work agenda. Second, to create a more common framework of understanding youth work from country to country and from region to region. And the third is the topic of recognition. I must underline that in all this concept, in all this packet of priorities, we are working together with the Council of Europe because we strongly believe that there is a common understanding, and it's not possible to develop such a tools at the level of European Union and leave the candidate countries or the rest of Europe outside this new framework. Thank you.
Thank you. And you said you will say something about inclusion later on. Don't let us hanging on. Do it now, please.
Okay, I will do it now. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So, one very interesting point is that there is a clear message coming to us from researchers and from statistics that during the pandemic, youth work proves its value. And offering support to young people, offering support to the societies, especially to the local societies. It was a lot of volunteer activities. A lot of people start volunteering, start to include in EU youth policies during the pandemic. And of course, I must say that a lot of new young people involved because of the digital tools. But at the same time, we have one point that is really important from the statistics that we have, and from the researches that we are doing, and even from the research that we did at the starting of the European Year of Youth. We mention again that the majority of the people involved, participate, and include in our very beautiful initiatives, the Erasmus+, European Solidarity Corps, and the development of youth policy. They have a very strong urban background. Mm-hmm. That means practically that there is a missing point in order to include young people living in rural areas. And this is one of the parallel initiatives and parallel priorities that we're going to touch during 2023. European Commission is going to launch a study for the conditions of young people living in rural areas. And under that, we are not going to cover the sociological or the conditions of the young people. We're going to explore, and this is the target, to explore why young people living in rural areas they have a limited participation in what we call European youth policy. Why they are not active in Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps. They are not so active, let's say, because there are good examples and there are young people and youth organizations and youth workers living and working in rural areas. But we need to improve, and we need more young people with a rural background. And this is also a clear connection with the inclusion priority of the strategy. And I have the feeling that also in this topic, the RAIN network can be a clear, strong partner for us for how to include more young people with a rural background.
Thank you. I'm glad you didn't keep it waiting. This was an important issue.
Okay.
So thanks for sharing. Yeah. I'll turn to Agnieszka now and ask, because you made a very good point about communicating the research. You were talking about research policy dialogue, and you gave some tips on make it short, make it understandable. But the question, and then within these priorities, what are the challenges that you foresee between research policy and research practice dialogue? Because you were talking with your colleagues in the same building, doing the same job more or less, but thinking about the wider community. Because you have a lot of publications which are under Polish National Agency's website in English and in Polish. So you're trying to communicate it. What are the challenges you see very briefly in our speed round, communicating your research to the policy and to the practice.
Okay, so as far as the communication is concerned, I think that this is the first issue is really that we have to address the things in a very clear and short, I would say, brief way. That's what I noticed, that this is basically the best, I would say, way of communication to decision makers. Because they expect something short, brief, and very, let's say, to the point. So this is actually how we try to do, but we also have this experience, and we have this policy to invite to our seminars and also to share our reports to them. So this is what we do. But those are not only decision makers, because what we want to do is to disseminate our research reports and our analysis to our beneficiaries, and of course to our colleagues at national agencies, but also to our beneficiaries. And this is the way that we do it constantly, because we are presenting the research reports during the meetings with potential beneficiaries, with the applicants, then with beneficiaries already, those whose projects were accepted. But we also talk, for example, research results are used, which I didn't know, but I recently found out, that our colleagues from the youth sector, for the youth department, they actually use the research results for the new colleagues, those who just came to the national agency, those who are starting their jobs, in order to show them that they actually work, that those grants and the projects, they work for something, that they have the results, that the competences are raised, that some changes are made, etc. So this is also the way that we are communicating the research results. But I want just to come back to this inclusion issue, if I may, and to say one more thing about inclusion and also about the projects, because I think that once we are thinking about researching and drawing the research plan and the research projects, I think that we have to have in mind that the projects that our beneficiaries are implementing, they touch, just like one of the speakers said before, they touch different issues. So digitalization, environment, but inclusions, I can imagine, and they are the issues that they are the priorities, they are met in many projects. So sometimes when we plan research on beneficiaries, we have in mind that we can actually tackle a couple of things at the same time, especially when we have limited number of beneficiaries, it's happening sometimes, right? So I think that, this topic of digitalization is very much, connected with the topic of inclusion. And once we are thinking about, how to research this digitalization, digital transformation, actually we had quite a brainstorming recently in our team. What is the difference between digitalization, and digital transformation? And so it was quite, good brainstorming about how we actually, what we understand, what is the, what is the concept behind all of this in order to understand actually the priority in full. So I think that, when we talk about inclusion, for example, we can actually tackle this issue while researching also other priorities in a sense. So this is just one of the reflections that I have, and also the reflection that I have after the workshops that we have recently in Krakow. And so coming back to the inclusion and the priorities, other priorities, I think that they are not complementary, but they can be tackled by our research simultaneously. And here I also want to draw your attention, also the attention of the RAY network, that we have lots of data already. And I think that we have to know how to use the data that we have, because we have the data that we partially use for one purpose, but we also collect lots of data that we don't use, or we can use tackling one or two issues and then comment it and then, let's say, sell it or communicate to policymakers or to our colleagues.
Thank you. Tanya, I'll ask the similar question to you, but as a researcher. What are the challenges you see researching these priorities in times of crisis and contribute to the youth work? I mean, operationalization has been mentioned. We have the concepts, but how do we operationalize them? How do you make them researchable is one challenge. The topics are very big as well, I can also imagine. But what is your take as a researcher that can be faced in the future?
Well, one thing that was when we had the pandemic affecting us in RAY, we were really quick in developing a new project for this, the RAY Core, and we did look into many things with this, and we had a first online survey in May 2020, so we were really quick reacting. But in other projects, we had to decide to postpone things because of this crisis situation. It's as Andreas said it in the morning, when the sector was struggling to survive, it wasn't the best moment to publish a report on innovation, and it wasn't the best moment to invite them to do a survey on organizational learning, and that happened with many things. So we had to be really, I think we had to get a feeling for the sector and see what it was like, to see what was really useful, and at that point it was really useful to do core, and luckily we were able to do that very quickly and to get the funding for it and everything. And it was more useful to postpone some other things, also to react to this whole survey fatigue that was then happening. And I think, well, maybe other people have another opinion, but I think we did that quite well. And maybe we have to be even more strategic about this in the future, so we can do that better. And maybe we have to have a strategy to better include the different priorities. We already have them there, but we have to have a strategy to do so better, I believe. But then we always have to have our, our sensors out there to see how the sector is developing and be able to quickly adapt.
Being in touch with what's happening on the field and their issues.
And that's a challenge, I think, for us, or for me.
And that's why we need the research practice dialogue very, very strengthened. And Anya, when this priority and green and sustainable issues came up, the practice field, people doing 3-4 day exchanges, doing a little workshop here and there about green and sustainability. There was an issue of level. How I mean is that individual actions, recycling your bottle of water, not coming to the meeting to consume plastic bottles of water, but bringing your own flask and glass. So these little individual actions. But on the other hand, some young people, some organizations are saying, I am doing these little gestures, little individual actions, but does it really make a difference? Does activism work? Should I do more than this? Or is it some kind of a greenwashing that I don't use plastic bottles while planes keep landing and massive ships are going and they keep building coal? So this is creating a little bit of debate on the field, on the practice. What is your take on that?
Again, it's a big question. I think I'm not going to tell everyone, no worries, get your plastic straw, stick it up a turtle's nose, it doesn't matter. We're not going to say that. It's everything that you can do is obviously helpful. But we do need to be thinking about where is the power and how can we actually create meaningful change. And I think what's interesting in this space, and especially thinking about young people, is the most recent psychological research that's coming out around climate anxiety. So stress when young people in particular, but also adults think about climate. And the research that's coming out is saying the most useful thing to do to combat climate anxiety is to take meaningful action. And that means action that can create change. And I think we have to be realistic when we talk to young people, when we do things with plastic bottles, with recycling, because we know there are bigger structures at play that are producing plastic, that are making it very difficult for us to live in a world without these kind of things. When we think about mobilizations, about traveling, I think this is a real question of intergenerational equity, because like the idea behind intergenerational equity is that young people should be able to achieve their goals and live their lives in the same way that people before them did. And so I think there's a lot of stuff to be grappled there around how can we support young people to do mobilizations, to go meet other cultures, to have other experiences in more environmentally friendly ways without stopping them too much. And it's a very difficult question to pull apart, because we can talk about here in Europe versus we can talk about a young person in Pakistan at the moment who has no home because their home is flooded. And I think when we talk about does activism work, there's lots of different types of activism. And I think what we need to be thinking about activism is, when we're supporting young people to do activism, are we supporting them to really see the causes of the crisis? Are we supporting them to take action on the causes of the crisis? And are we supporting their voices to be heard at policy-making levels, at decision-making levels, so those issues can actually be resolved at those levels? And I think that's where youth workers can be really powerful around this activism question, because I think otherwise we're getting really bogged down in, oh, should I fly? Should I use this plastic bottle? When there's bigger power structures at play that are like perpetrating this crisis. So we should do our best. We should do what we can. If we can fly to conferences, if we can, or no, we shouldn't. If we can, if we can take the boat or walk or take the train, we should. But we should have a real balance of, are we at the same time supporting those young people to be critical of the real structures? Are we supporting them to actually engage, to have meaningful contributions to the how to actually create change? And are they being listened to? And I think that's the crucial thing, is with all this activism that young people are doing, they're doing it because they're saying no one is listening to us. And so it's a responsibility on adults to create the structures where they can be meaningfully listened to.
Thank you. This is illuminating. In terms of live stream, we're coming close towards our end, but I want to ask the $1 million question to Alicia, because when the pandemic happened, it was also, the crisis happened, it was also illuminating to see that there was already so much going on the digital issue. I mean, we keep using the example Zoom. Zooming became a word, actually, also. It's only one brand, but it refers to all online meetings. It was already there. It was already being used by some people. It just became more common for people to use it. And then it was, for instance, for me, it was a little bit frustrating to see the asymmetry of knowledge, because they already knew this was coming. It's just we learned it because of the crisis quicker. And it makes me think, what else is already out there that we don't know, but it's being developed and it will come to use? Because 10 years ago, if we mentioned these things, people would say, oh, no, really, this is science fiction. But now it's happening. So how does the future of digital transformation and digitalization look like, Alicia? I know it's a very big question, but youth work and youth workers, we need to be trained, because we were caught a little bit off guard. We didn't have energizers and activities prepared for Zoom. What we did in the beginning was immediately copied what we were doing in physical, try to do it in Zoom, telling people to get up in their rooms and do what we were doing in our room. So what is the future? How can we prepare it? And can you answer this in 2 minutes? Sorry.
No, I'm happy to give you a vague answer to this $1 million question, but actually we have done a little bit of research around, the limitation of digital technologies in the context of youth work over the last several years. And there are several things that I can mention here. Moving forward, what have we learned over the last few years? And this is specifically focusing on the area of digital youth work. So kind of using digital technologies in the context of youth work or non-formal education, both directly and in terms of like critical analysis of digital transformation. So the discussions around how digital technologies affect our lives. So I think when me and Adina Serban, who was the co-author of this paper that we wrote, which is called The Limits of Digital Youth Work, and you can access the podcast and the paper somewhere online. Also happy to share a link after, because I'm gonna shamelessly promote my own work as you do.
If they Google your name, they can find it. Because everybody's asking how can I get this
it's all there.
paper.
But
Okay.
I'm a researcher, and I am going to research through I'm going to refer to my previous research, of course. But there are a few things out there that I think we should pay attention to, and one of which is that there has to be a recognition of the fact that digital technologies have become this sort of new actor in the space of youth work, right? So it's not longer just about young people and youth workers, but there's digital technologies in the middle as well. And that's a new power, that's a new source of power and an actor that brings a new set of dynamics. So the process of empowerment, the process of like giving young people voice has changed because we've got this new power structure that can affect the way we work with young people. So for instance, to give you an example of how that could affect the youth educational process, there was a workshop there where I worked with young people and a youth group where these youth workers were trying to set up a club. It was all about body positivity. And then, we used Instagram to set up a body positivity campaign. But because algorithm knew that there was some sort of body-related content, it started targeting young people with, some sort of healthy eating content, which was the opposite of what we were trying to do. So it's considering the new power dynamics that these digital technologies bring into the entire sector and critically thinking about what do we do with this. There's approaches from formal education where these things are being somewhat managed. I think that the non-formal educational sector is this place where anything goes. And I think that maybe young people do deserve better than this. So I think having a strategic approach to kind of maybe looking at youth-centered technologies in the non-formal educational sector would be great. So thinking about the tech solutionist and datification of young people's lives in this sector, so collecting young people's data, and thinking, just being aware that sometimes we just throw technologies at something and that this might fix the problem, and that might not be the case, because this is very often what we've learned from the recent years, that digital technologies just kind of got in the way. And one of the things that we need to acknowledge with digital transformation is that some things will just stay offline, and they'll be the best if they just happen in the room with a young person. So some things will stay that have to be digital free. And that's one of the things that we argue for in that paper as well. And the other two things, and just very broadly, one of them, so one is very practical. And one is, just how do we ensure that we continue to examine very, very, how do we stay up to date with what digital skills are and what young people need to get them. And digital transformation in the youth work space is this unique place where youth workers can and are very often, addressing these needs, because schools don't have the time and they often cannot deal with these very unique or embarrassing issues. Like if there is cyberbullying or sexting, very often young people come to these, these youth workspaces. And this is where the drama is being sort of explored and examined. So I think we need these spaces to be taken seriously. And I think that youth workspaces really need to be given some sort of new holistic support, so we have to explore new ways of supporting these spaces to deal with digital transformation. And it shouldn't be on the youth workers themselves to continuously train themselves in all of these different aspects of digital transformation, because I think it's impossible. It's thinking about new ways of support, of interdisciplinary support, thinking about new ways of learning, or having hubs of experts. People talked about in the focus groups that I've done recently, people talked about having peer support groups or having access to, like a learning platform where you have different, experts that you can work with, or some new ways of support. So we are agile, and we have also the emotional resilience, so we don't feel guilty that we are unable to catch up with digital transformation. So I think, there is lots to be unpacked in the future, but I think if we just focus on the people and make sure that we are all kind of able to carry this emotional luggage and have the support network to deal with it, I think that's the best way to focus on that. And then the innovation might happen, hopefully in line with the human-centered values, you know. So if we could give all young people digital devices and online access without assumptions that it's free for everybody, you know, that they can do online volunteering because online access is free, it isn't. So that would also be a practical solution without having their data collected. So they're willing to so they're able to think for themselves. That would be amazing, but that cannot happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
a critical friend of mine would say, "You want fries with that," meaning you're asking too much already. You know.
Yes, but it's just a shopping list that I have.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, we can make this happen. Come on.
I agree.
Sure
Why not? I mean, that would be good. But thanks for leaving us with one point as well. We're already over time, so we thank the people hosting us in their homes or offices or mobile phones, or okay, I'll stop here. I don't know where they are watching us now. It can be all because having taught online for some time, I learned not to ask where are you now. But before we end the live stream, it's still on, right? We are still watching us. One takeaway point for the people who are watching, because we'll continue the debate in person here. Babis, one takeaway point for people who listen to us, some kind of technology, fridge with Wi-Fi in their kitchen, whatever. But for the people who joined us in live stream, what would be one takeaway point for them to share? You know, I listened to a live stream and the guy from Commission said this. What would you like them to remember?
Yeah, I have the feeling that the most important is to understand the value of youth work and the need to develop it mainly in local level. So it's good, whatever we have, all these tools, the European youth programs and whatever, but don't forget that the heart, the core of youth work is our municipality, is our neighborhood, is our school, our social initiative. So the real value of youth work, the value of whatever we're doing is counting in a very local level. So we need to pay more attention on that and to give the clear signal to young people that yes, mobility, yes, volunteering, but don't forget your neighborhood, don't forget your city, don't forget your village, wherever you are active, wherever you are living. It's really important for the development of the youth strategy and the youth policy.
Thank you. Agnieszka, your one takeaway point for the live stream audiences?
Let me just give one conclusion about the research, that we have to address the priorities that we set up, we agreed upon them, but we have to do this taking into account our resources. We also have to draw up from the conclusions of the previous reports and previous data that we have. We have to share and communicate in as broad as possible, but also in a quite simple way. But also we have to talk and to share the information, to share our experience in order to proceed with our research in a better way in the future.
Thank you. Tanya?
Maybe I didn't elaborate so much on it, but now as a takeaway point, I would say that Ray is also trying to help this dialogue a lot. So we're also trying to create spaces for this dialogue to happen, and we try to improve with the research, communication, and everything. So maybe the takeaway point would be that we've got quite a lot to look back at, but we also have lots of things we want to do in the future, so keep watching out for what we're doing.
Thank you. Onya?
Someone once said to me, when we think about these complicated issues around climate and what we should do and what shouldn't we do, that the key question we should ask ourselves is, who are we willing to sacrifice? And that's a very difficult question to think about. But I think youth workers are placed in a really interesting position to raise up the voices of the people who may be sacrificed as people decide how we're going to transition. And I think that's something to maybe keep in mind for research and for practice. That question, how do we make sure that people are not sacrificed in this transition, that people are brought along and actually have meaningful lives? And part of that is about bringing those voices to the table and actually listening to those voices. And I think youth workers have a really strong role, and researchers have a really strong role to play in that.
Thank you very much. With this, we will conclude our live stream, and we will continue discussing here in Prague. Babis, Alicia, thank you. We're sorry you can't be with us, but we're very happy that you shared your opinion with us. And all those people that listened and watched us, thank you, and I hope you